Paula, Taoiseach, I also believe we need statements on what's happening in Jerusalem. The particular spark for this event is the fact that the Israeli authorities, prompted by settlers, are seeking to evict 28 families from the Sheikh Jarrah area of Jerusalem. And it's worth saying that these people are already double refugees in that they were driven from Haifa and villages and towns across Palestine in 1948, eventually finding some home in places like Sheikh Jarrah with the assistance of UN construction of housing and so on, and now illegal settlers, with the assistance of the Israeli state, are trying to drive them out. And then you have horrendous brutality being used by the Israeli police against Palestinians who want to protest against this. It's just not acceptable. And there needs to be more, there needs to be clear statements, but we also need the government to call for actual sanctions against Israel for its horrendous treatment of the Palestinians.
Please, Deputy Gary Gannon.
Obviously, these issues were not raised by the parties concerned on the Business Committee, but the government is extremely concerned with what's happening in the Middle East, with the clashes in Jerusalem, with the attacks on Gaza, and a number of deaths have been reported in Gaza since Monday of this week, following the launch by Israeli forces of an operation in response to rocket fire from the Gaza Strip. And in eastern Jerusalem, hundreds were injured over the last 3 days during clashes. As has been said, government remains extremely concerned about the evictions of Palestinian families in Sheikh Jarrah and in other Palestinian neighbourhoods in occupied East Jerusalem. The government raised this and participated at an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council yesterday, and Minister Coveney has raised the issue at the Foreign Affairs Council also. And it's not a question that the EU is going along with this. That's very lazy commentary, which doesn't do justice to the European Union's commitment to the Palestinians community in terms of funding, supports, particular of UNRWA. And for far too long in this House, Europe gets cast in a very poor light, notwithstanding the very extensive supports it provides for Palestinian education, Palestinian human rights and support. And I think that needs to be said, and I'm just saying it, because I just think there's far too much of a one-sided view of everything in terms of the European Union. We're members of the European Union. We should stand up for the European Union from time to time. So we have no issue in statements, but it may be next week in terms of the facilitation of the House, but we should have statements on the issue. We also should, I think, at some stage, maybe next week, have statements on the Ballymurphy inquest and our thoughts today are with the families of those who were killed unjustifiably in Ballymurphy on those terrible 3 days in August of 1971. And the inquest has been very, very clear in its conclusions that all were entirely wrongly killed, all were entirely innocent. I would have toured that area myself back as Minister for Foreign Affairs. I acknowledge the extraordinary perseverance and commitment of the families involved who've waited a long, long time, over nearly 50 years to get some sense of justice for their loved ones. And I think it speaks more broadly to the legacy issue more generally. And this inquest and its outcome does deserve to be debated in this House. Also, the Irish Government has supported the Ballymurphy families for many years, and we will continue to stand in solidarity with them. And the legacy of violence in Northern Ireland remains a deep wound, and I think that we should perhaps, maybe it might be possible early next week to have a debate on that, or statements on that, as well as statements on the Middle East as well, because I think the House has acted before collectively on the Middle East. We've issued joint statements in relation to the Middle East in the past, and the government will be supportive of such an approach.
Okay.